Hello, everyone. Great to see you out here tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, almost evening. It's been an amazing National Book Festival here at the Poetry and Prose Pavilion. I'm excited to introduce this next 4 o'clock event, The Poetry of Silence, with Sheila Black and Ilya Kaminsky. My name is Rob Casper. I'm the head of the Poetry and Literature Center at the Library of Congress. We are home to the U.S. Poet Laureate and promote poets and writers all throughout the year at the library and beyond. We have a big reading coming up with the U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo on September 19th. We hope you show up there. But in the meantime, you're going to have a wild 45 minutes with our 2 featured authors. Since 2017, this pavilion has featured pairings of literary writers reading their work and participating in conversations. However, for this event, as opposed to the events throughout the day where we had Library of Congress and National Endowment for the Arts staff moderated discussion, we've decided to take a different approach, featuring Ilya Kaminsky in conversation with Sheila Black, recipient of the library's Witter Bynner Fellowship in 2012. Black is the author of 4 poetry collections, most recently Iron Ardent, published by Odessa Press in 2017. She's also co-edited 2 anthologies, Beauty is a Verb, The New Poetry of Disability, and The Right Way to Be Crippled and Naked, The Fiction of Disability. The former executive director of Gemini, Inc., Black currently serves as Director of Development at the Association of Writers and Writing Programs and divides her time between Washington, D.C. and San Antonio. Ilya Kaminsky is the author of 2 poetry collections, including Deaf Republic, published this March by Grey Wolf Press. He has also co-edited and co-translated many other books, including the Echo Anthology of International Poetry and Dark Elderberry Branch, Poems of Marina Tsvetseva. His awards include fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Lanham Foundation, and the Guggenheim Foundation, as well as the Whiting Writers Award, the American Academy of Arts and Letters Metcalf Award, and Poetry Magazine's Levinson Prize. He is a professor of poetry and a program co-director. Oops, you're no longer at San Diego State University. He is a professor of poetry at Georgia Tech University in Atlanta. Please join me in welcoming first Sheila Black and Ilya Kaminsky.
Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. I feel like I need a little stool for the podium. I'm quite small. It's 4 o'clock, so I thought we could all begin with a big round of applause for the wonderful Amy Stoles, Jessica Flynn, and everybody else at the NEA for putting on this amazing festival. Yay. And what we're going to do this afternoon is I'm going to begin by reading a few poems. Then Ilya is going to follow by reading some poems from his wonderful Deaf Republic. And then we're going to have a conversation. So today what I thought I'd do is I'm going to read one poem of my own, but I was really lucky this year, and I'm standing on my tiptoes. I hope you all can't tell. Oh, you're a sweetie. Okay, now I'm not on my tiptoes. I was really fortunate this year because myself and a fellow poet, Jennifer Bartlett, and another fellow poet, Connie Voisin, decided to start a nonprofit that would be a conference for writers with disabilities in the model of kind of cave canem, where people come to learn and teach. And we had 11 fellows. The fellows stay with us for 3 years. And it was the most amazing experience. We had 11 writers with disabilities from across the country, and one guy who came from across the Atlantic, traveling by wheelchair, well, not by wheelchair, but with his wheelchair, all the way from Yorkshire, England. So when I got this stage, they put together an anthology of the work they produced in the residency, and they're so exciting and such wonderful poets. I thought I'd just read a few of their words. So I'm going to start with, and I just discovered I need glasses. The last time I came up on a poetry stage, I hadn't quite mastered the fact that I'm actually nearsighted at this point, you know, a byproduct of age. And I got on stage and I was having to hold the book 2 inches from my face. So it was a lesson. I'm going to start with one of our fellows. This poem is by Elizabeth Theriot. She's a young writer from Louisiana. And it's called Take Me to Your Leader. I want to need my body less. Yes, I am ready for the alien overlords with their cybernetic parts who lower me into a tank of strange luminescent fluid, connect wires and press buttons and upload my brain while all my non-renewable perishables are replaced with indestructible metals, sturdy yet pliant synthetic skin, nerves, other intestinal bits. Maybe I'll still even shit like one of those baby-born dolls. Or maybe I'll be like a vampire whose particular mythos allows her to still eat for fun. Because yes, I want all the good parts of being in a body, the tastes and smells and pleasures of other life forces inside me, masticated, caressed, the best of both worlds, to live and never die. I will tell the aliens, look, I can write poems. I am writing this for you. Please value me. Please save what I never could. Thank you. And I'd like to read all the poems in this book. Unfortunately, I just have to pick a selection. This poem is by a poet called Margaret Ricks. She has cerebral palsy. She's from Kentucky. I think that coming to San Antonio, she told me, was the first time she'd left her state. And her poem is called Fala, and it's named after the most photographed dog of the 1940s. I am a dog of blackout curtains who sniffs at the somber hive of sharp, creased pant legs. I belong with the man on wheels who rubs my neck exactly right. At sea, sailors snip my coat. We live in rooms of the blocked out sun. When he slides from the chair, long, useless bones. I am the only creature present, smelling his ear, offering my damp, callow nose. And one of the things that happened at this workshop that I really loved, this residency conference, it was really a residency, was the 11 poets all started to write poems in response to each other's poems. We really formed a pretty tight community in this 4 days. And it was kind of crazy because we were in this wonderful school, Our Lady of the Lake, that tried its hardest, but was really not an accessible building. So I have somewhat of a mobility, disability. I was born with something called X-linked hypophosphatemia. I don't absorb phosphorus, and it results in reduced stature, weakened bones, and curved legs. But I was the one who had to, the wheelchair accessible ramp was like 3 football fields away from the classroom we were in. So all of us were running up and down, and it really taught me something about how spaces and institutions really were built without disabled people present, a kind of absence or silence. But out of all that, we formed a tight community. So this poem is by the guy who came from Yorkshire, and it's called When We Say Goodbye, We Talk Too Fast, a poem that talks to the poems of Zouglasia Fellows, Zoe Stoller, Naomi Ortiz, Stephanie Height, and Margaret Ricketts. Silence asks for 2 shots, oat milk extra hot, the usual. The day is 4 hours out of bed, but you wake only when caffeine has been consumed. You take the reusable in both hands, wrap fingers around warming plastic like a hungry body stretched across the shoreline. The coffee speaks. Tomorrow, turn away from the sun, look toward the moon. I inhale 4 self-measured goodbyes. Later, when the caffeine has left, I watch you, my ritual. You stand in the bedroom that's actually an office, but really where we keep our laundry. You take out hair grips, which you won't find again. Remove dance class glitter, moisturize. You do all this while gazing out the window at the lighthouse beam, 250,000 miles from Earth. Your ritual. Tomorrow, a passport apart, when I look past rooftops and connect night sky dots, our shadows will join. Next week, we'll be alive. And the last poem I'm going to read is by me, and it was the first poem I ever wrote about having a disability, and I was about 40 years old. And with my XLH, I had very crooked legs as a small child, and then when I was 13, I had a large surgery called a double osteotomy, where they break your legs in repeated places and they pivot the knee, they pivot the whole kind of shape of the bone to sort of give you a straighter appearance. And it was really interesting because I went from being a very visibly disabled person to a person that really could almost seem not disabled. And that's what this poem is about. What you mourn. The year they straightened my legs, the young doctor said, meaning to be kind, now you will walk straight on your wedding day. But what he could not imagine is how even on my wedding day, I would arch back and wonder about that body I had before I was changed, how I would have nested in it, made it my home, how I repeated his words when I wished to stir up my native anger, feel like the exile I believed I was, imprisoned in a foreign body, like a person imprisoned in a foreign land, forced to speak a strange tongue, heavy in the mouth, a mouth full of stones. Crippled, they called us when I was young. Later, the word was disabled and then differently abled, but these were all names given by outsiders, none of whom could imagine that the crooked body they spoke of, the body which made walking difficult and running practically impossible except as a kind of dance, a sideways looping, like someone about to fall headlong down and hug the earth. That body they tried so hard to fix, straighten, was simply mine. And I loved it, as you love your own country. The familiar lay of the land, the unkempt trees, the smell of mowed grass, down to the nameless flowers at your feet, clover, asphodel, and the blue flies that buzz over them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this beautiful reading. Thank you. It's truly an honor to be able to thank the Library of Congress and National Endowment for the Arts for making this gathering possible. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you. Thank you all for being in this room. So I'm going to read some poems from Deaf Republic. I'm really going to read about 3 poems. 2 of them are very short and 1 rather longer. There will be text on the screen so you can follow. As you might have noticed it by now, I speak with a very heavy Russian accent. So hopefully by the end of the next 24 hours that we'll spend together, you will all also speak with a very heavy Russian accent. But for this side of the room, since it might be harder to follow on the screen, I believe you all have the copy of the handout, right? Okay, great. Thank you all again. The first poem is called We Lived Happily During the War. We lived happily during the war, and when they bombed other people's houses, we protested, but not enough. We opposed them, but not enough. I was in my bed. Around my bed, America was falling. Invisible house by invisible house by invisible house. I took a chair outside and watched the sun. In the 6th month of a disastrous reign, in a house of money, in a street of money, in a city of money, in a country of money, our great country of money, we, forgive us, lived happily during the war. Let's not clap, they're just poems, so I'll just read them. We don't have to clap, okay? So what is going to follow now is a series of poems from Deaf Republic. They're mostly from the part 1 of the book. It is a story of a pregnant woman and her husband who live in the middle of crisis. They witness a soldier shoot and kill a deaf boy. And in a response to that murder, the people of the town protest by refusing to hear the authorities. Okay? So Deaf Republic, the first one is called Gunshot. 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 Our country is a stage. When soldiers march into town, public assemblies are officially prohibited. But today, neighbors flock to the piano music from Sonia and Alfonso's puppet show in Central Square. Some of us have climbed up in the trees, others hide behind benches and telegraph poles. When Petya, the deaf boy in the front row, sneezes, the sergeant puppet collapses shrieking. He stands up again, snorts, shakes his fist at the laughing audience. An army jeep swerves into the square, disgorging its own sergeant. Disperse immediately! Disperse immediately. The puppet mimics in a wooden falsetto. Everyone freezes, except Petya, who keeps giggling. Someone claps a hand over his mouth. The sergeant turns towards the boy, raising his finger. You, the puppet raises a finger. Sonia watches her puppet. The puppet watches the sergeant. The sergeant watches Sonia and Alfonso. But the rest of us watch Petya lean back, gather all the speed in his rod, and launch it at the sergeant. The sound we do not hear lifts the clouds of the water. As soldiers march, Alfonso covers the boy's face with a newspaper. 14 people, most of us strangers, watch Sonia kneel by Petya shot in the middle of the street. She picks up his spectacles shining like 2 coins, balances them on his nose. Observe this moment, how it convulses. Snow falls, and the dogs run into the streets like medics. 14 of us watch Sonia kisses his forehead. Her shutter hole torn in the sky. It shimmered the park benches, porchlights we see. In Sonia's open mouth, the nakedness of the whole nation. She stretches out beside the little snowman napping in the middle of the street. Speaking up, it's pale. The country runs. Alfonso, in snow. You're alive. I whisper to myself. There for something in your distance. Something runs down the street, falls, fails to get up. I run, etc. With my legs and my hands behind my pregnant wife, etc. Down Wasenka Street I run. It only takes a few minutes, etc. to make a man. Deafness and insurgency begins. Our country woke up next morning and refused to hear soldiers. In the name of Petya, we refuse. At 6 a.m., when soldiers compliment the girls in the alleyway, the girls slide by, pointing to their ears. At 8, the bakery door is shut and soldiers Ivana face, though he is the best customer. At 10, Mama Gala chokes, no one hears you, on the gates of the soldiers' barracks. By 11 a.m., arrests begin. Our hearing does not weaken, but something silent in us strengthens. After curfew, families of the arrested hung homemade puppets out of their windows. The streets empty but for the squeaks of strings and the tap against the buildings of wooden fists and feet. In the ears of the town, snow falls. Alfonso stands unswerable. My people, you were really something fucking fun. On the morning of the first arrests, our men, once frightened, bound to their beds, now stand up like human masks. Daphnis passes through us like a police whistle. Here as I testify, each of us comes home, shuts at a wall, at a stove, at a refrigerator, at himself, forgive me. I was honest with you. Life, to you I stand, answerable. I ran, etc. with my legs and my hands, etc. I ran down Wasenka Street, etc. Whoever listens, thank you for the feather on my tongue. Thank you for our arguments that ends. Thank you for deafness, Lord, such fire from a match you never lit. That map of Bourne and opened valves. I watched the sergeant then, the deaf boy, take iron and fire in his mouth, his face in the asphalt, that map of Bourne and opened valves. It is the air, something in the air wants us too much. The earth is still, the tower guards eat cucumber sandwiches. This first day, soldiers examine the years of bartenders, accountants, soldiers. The wicked in silence dust to soldiers. They tear Gora's wife from her bed like a door of a bus. Observe this moment, how it convulses. The body of the boy lies on the asphalt like a pepper clip. The body of the boy lies on the asphalt like the body of a boy. I touch the walls, feel the pulse of the house, and I stare up wordless and do not know why I am alive. We tiptoe the city, Sonia and I, between theaters and gardens and wrought iron gates. Be courageous, we say, but no one is courageous at the sound We do not hear, live the birds of the water. Before the war, we made a child. I kissed a woman whose freckles are those the neighbors. She had a mole on her shoulder, which she displayed like medals for bravery. Her trembling lips, when come to bed, her hair, water falling in the middle of the conversation, when come to bed. I walked in my barber shop of thoughts. Yes, I lifted her off to bed on the chair of my hairy arms. But parted lips, when bite my parted lips, lying under the school sheets, Sonia, the things we did. Soldiers aim at us. Soldiers aim at us. They fire as a crowd of women flees inside the nostrils of searchlights. My God, have a photograph of this! In the piazza's bright air, soldiers drag Petya's body and his head bang the stairs. I feel through my white shorts the shape of our child. Soldiers drag Petya up the stairs, and homeless ducks, then as philosophers understand everything and bark. I, now on a bridge with no camouflage of speech, a body wrapping the body of my pregnant wife. Tonight, we don't die, and don't die. The earth is still. A helicopter I boast my wife on earth. A man cannot flip a finger at the sky, because each man is already a finger flipped at the sky. Lullaby. Little daughter, rain, water, snow, and branches protect you. Whitewashed walls and neighbors' hands. Oh, child of my Aprils, little earth of 6 pounds. My white hair keeps you asleep, lit. While the child sleeps, Sonia undresses. She scrubs me until I spit soapy water. Big, she smiles. A man should smell better than his country. Such is the silence of a woman who speaks again. Silence known. Silence is what moves us to speak. She throws my shoes and glasses in the air. I'm of deaf people, and I have no country but a bathtub and an infant and a marriage bed. Soaping together, that is sacred to us. Watching each other's shoulders. You can fuck anyone, but with whom can you see it in water? 4 a.m. bombardment. My body runs in a loam of street, my clothes in a pillowcase. I look for a man who looks exactly like me, to give him my Sonia, my name, my shirt. It has begun. Neighbors climb the trolleys at the fish market, breaking all their moments in half. Trolleys burst like intestines in the sun. Pavel shouts, I am so fucking beautiful I cannot stand it. 2 boys, still holding tomato sandwiches, hop in a trolley slide. Soldiers aim at their faces, their ears. I can't find my wife. Where is my pregnant wife? I, a body, an adult male, awaits to explode like a hand grenade. It has begun. I see the blue canary of my country. Big breadcrumbs from each citizen's size. Big breadcrumbs from my neighbor's hair. Snow leaves the earth and falls straight up as it should, to have a country. So important to run in the falls, in the streetlights, in the loved ones as one should. The blue canary of my country runs in the walls, in the streetlights, in the loved ones. The blue canary of my country watches their legs as they run and fall. As you go out, watch. Vasinka citizens do not know they are evidence of happiness. In a time of war, each is a ripped out document of laughter. Watch, God, they have something to tell that not even they can hear. If you climb a roof in a central square of this bombed out city, you will see one neighbor gives a cigarette, another gives a dog a pint of sunlit beer. You will find me, God, like a damn pigeon's beak. I am pecking every which way at astonishment. Firing squad. On balconies, sunlight. On poplars, sunlight. On our lips. Today, no one is shooting. A girl cuts her hair with imaginary scissors. That scissors in sunlight, her hair in sunlight. Another girl nicks a pair of shoes from a sleeping soldier's covered with light. Our soldiers wake and gape at us, gaping at them. What do they see? Tonight, they shot 50 women at Lerner Street. I sit down to write and tell you what I know. A child learns the world by putting it in her mouth. A girl becomes a woman and a woman earth. Body, they blame you for all things and say, sick in the body, for does not live in the body. The townspeople watch them take Alfonso. Now, each of us is a witness stand. Vasenka watches us watch for soldiers, throw Alfonso Brabinski on a sidewalk. We let them take him. All of us covers what we don't say. We carry in our suitcases, our coat pockets, our nostrils. Across the street, they wash him with fire hoses. First he screams, then he stops. So much sunlight, a t-shirt falls off a closest line, and an old man stops, picks it up, presses it to his face. Neighbors line up to watch him, thrown on his sidewalk like a vaudeville lock. Ta-da! In so much sunlight, each of us is a witness stand. They take Alfonso, and no one stands up. Our silence stands up for us. And the last poem I'll read, hopefully will bring it all much closer home. It's called In a Time of Peace. In a time of peace. Inhabitant of earth for 40-something years, I once found myself in a peaceful country. I watch neighbors open their phones to watch a cop demanding a man's driver license. And when the man reaches for his wallet, the cop shoots into the car window, shoots. It is a peaceful country. We pocket our phones and go to the dentist to pick up the kids from school to buy shampoo and basil Ours is a country in which a boy shot by police lies on a pavement for hours. We see in his open mouth the nakedness of the whole nation. We watch others, watch. The body of a boy lies on a pavement, exactly like the body of a boy. It is a peaceful country, and it clips our citizens' bodies effortlessly, the way the president's wife trims her toenails. All of us still have to do the hard work of dentist appointments, of remembering to make a summer salad, basil, tomatoes. It is a joy, tomatoes and a little salt. This is a time of peace. I don't hear gunshots, but watch birds splash over the backyards of the suburbs. How bright is the sky, and the avenue spins on its axis. How bright is the sky? Forgive me. How bright. Thank you.
Waiting for, oh, we're on. Welcome. That was amazing, Ilya. That was wonderful. I thought we'd start by talking about the title of this, The Poetry of Silence. The book has so many kinds of silence and thinks about silence in so many ways. And you said a really beautiful thing in an interview I read with you once, that the lyric was a strangeness inside language, and that silence was also inside language. So what do we mean when we talk about poetry of silence? What do you think we're talking about?
I think when we talk about lyric strangeness, what the first thing that comes to mind for me is an image from King Lear by Shakespeare. So there is this old blind king,
Yes.
whose daughter just died, and he's holding her in his arms. And Shakespeare is this master of eloquence, who could say any beautiful thing you can imagine. At that moment, Shakespeare have King Lear say just one completely ungrammatical thing: never, 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 never. And so in the middle of all this glory that is King Lear by Shakespeare, you have this completely strange thing that happens. And you ask yourself, why? And for me, it is because language oftentimes for poets is not enough.
No.
In a great poet like Paul Celan, of German language after Holocaust, he asked himself, how do I respond to that, writing in German, the language of people who killed my mother? Or Cesar Vallejo writing in a completely different part of the world in Latin America, was putting three dashes in the three periods in the middle of a line, jumping from one thing to another. Or Emily Dickinson writing here in English with dashes, creating a language kind of all of her own, and denies a master of rhyme. She denied us the rhyme in a moment when she actually meant to say something for us to remember. So I think writers manipulate the kind of silence in order to give us something that they want us to keep. In a way, for me, poetry is a moment of silence, a moment of awe that travels from one human body to another by means of language.
Yeah, and I think there's also a way in which language can show how we stutter and how metaphor and eloquence fail us at times. I mean, when really terrible things happen in our lives, we don't speak like Shakespeare or in this great glorious language. We often lose our speech.
But what is silence for you?
it's a little bit like that. I noticed in the poem when you say first, the boy lies like a paperclip in the street. It's a metaphor, and we love metaphor. But then you say he lies like a boy. And putting those two together, you almost illustrate how it comes down.
Well, when you are facing this kind of tragedy, you realize that a pretty like metaphor is not going to do it. You just got to say what happened.
What happened, exactly. And there's moments where you strip away almost all the decoration of yourself. But at the same time, for me, silence as a poet is definitely related to music. I think that we think about silence. You said this yourself. You said that, if we didn't have silence, all the music would just be noise. There wouldn't be those moments to take it
Without
in.
silence, music is just noise. Silence gives it rhythm, punctuates it.
Exactly.
It's punctuation.
And I guess politically in this book, I also think of silence in terms of all the paradoxes we see in the book of language can silence people. I mean, any sort of government or corporate or even, we speak about this a lot in disability. There was a great politeness around disability. I suppose I had a physical, visible disability, and I'd say a lot of my childhood was spent with people being very kind about it, but the kindness was pretending it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And I love in your book how when the townspeople refuse to hear, in a sense, it's something we all want to do. We all wish there was something we could just do within us that would make the world less cruel or less. You have this great thing that kind of relates to silence I was curious about. You have this beautiful precision in the early scenes, the early poems of the book, when we see the boy shot. We don't actually hear the gunshot, we see the gulls lifting. It's an image, and it reverberates, it enters our body. And you have a line you repeat, the moment convulses. The moment convulses, you say, where is it? You say, observe this moment, how it convulses. I loved your use of that word. What did you mean convulses when you think of that moment convulsing?
It's a wonderful question. I'm afraid I have to start a little bit from FR in answering it, because we really unpacked only one side of silence, that is a creative dwelling, a creative moment. There's also a destructive moment. I'm hard of hearing, and the first question I ask anybody else who is either hard of hearing or deafblind, I ask, well, do you believe in silence? And most people who are hard of hearing or deaf say, no, I don't. And over time, I realized that the silence is really, truly a creation of the hearing.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And if we admit that, just now we admitted that, that puts into question every single religion, philosophy, metaphysics, and Western or other traditions that we have that is based on silence at its core. It makes us wonder, well, what does it mean if it's merely a creation of a certain part of population of this planet?
That's a great idea. Did everyone follow this? He's saying that silence is sort of a creation of the hearing. You asked many, and because, for example, an ASL or a language that's gestural, or the way in this poem you read, the sound we do not hear lifts the gulls off the water. We know exactly what that's, from the hearing perspective, we know exactly what has happened. We know what that sound is. Yet somehow the image makes it reverberate in a sonic way, which is really interesting.
The other thing to consider for me, and that goes a little bit more away from just perspective of somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing to a general population who might consider themselves disabled. And in this country, anybody who doesn't have health insurance, which is most of us, begins to move into that population.
Yes.
And that was for me early on when I first began to study. In college, was a wonderful book called Extraordinary Body.
By Rosemary, that's an amazing book.
Rosemary Garland Thompson, a classic, really by now, of disability studies. And when in the introduction to the book, she says something like, a disabled body should move from the realm of the hospital into the realm of political minority. And what does it mean for all of us in this room who don't have health insurance?
And being in the realm of the hospital, I thought about that a lot, because for me, which might be a bit different from you, I had often thought of hospital as my homeland. Not my homeland, but
Well, you say it in one of your poems here.
Yes, because I spent a lot of time in hospitals, either being observed or having surgery. Not really that much, but enough, you know? So it was what I had in common with the disability community. But when I read Rosemary Garland Thompson and thought about it, I thought, yes, it's because we've been sort of sealed in our private drama, and we didn't have a way of seeing of ourselves as a collective. And being a political minority is a lot more of a collective, active identity. And so she's right.
That for me in writing the book was important because I wanted silence to be something that enables, that inspires, as opposed to something that shuts down. Unfortunately, I wrote a book about human beings, so I had to have a conflict, and human beings are not perfect, and by the end of the book, a lot of drama happens.
Well, I think the book, though, is a very timely book, and I kind of wanted to talk about that. It definitely seems informed by all the terrible kind of holocausts and political drama we've seen in the 20th century. It's interesting that often in modern America, I think we've pretended, and I would say this is another example of silence. We've pretended in some ways that we weren't a nation that took place in that, when we certainly were. I mean, one fascinating, you said this, or I don't know if it's in your book, but I think I read it in an interview with you, and I agree. America was the site of this huge genocide that was of its native populations that was completely silenced, really. You know, you can go to any place in the country and there'd be stories like the story you tell in some ways. So I think I'm interested in that idea. I think that part of what happens with is silence becomes enabling, but there's also that idea of the many metaphorical meanings of silence, would you say?
You know, I come from Ukraine. I was born in 1997 when Ukraine was very much a part of USSR. And I came here when I was 16 in 1993. My first book, Dancing in Odessa, was more about, well, how do I keep my Russian-Ukrainian heritage embodied here? So it became almost poetry written in the language of images. I didn't even feel like I was writing it in English, but in what I thought was language of images. And I finished that book. It was published in 2004. By that point, I had to ask myself, well, what am I going to do next? And I could have written another book about that same experience, but I felt like I would be playing a Russian to do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. So I had to ask myself, well, who am I? What is an American side of me? And this book is really very much a fairy tale, a fable, which tries to tell kind of from a refugee perspective, what does it mean to describe life back in Ukraine, but also life here in the United States. I lived in San Diego, California, on the border for the last 12 years. And in San Diego, watching a person being dragged in the ice car was something that was very common in the past decade that I have been there. It was a daily occurrence. And that shows you, yeah, you really do live in the empire. And so you begin to ask yourself, well, how did it begin? And did it ever end? Well, no, it never ended. We still live in the empire.
No.
And we never acknowledged that. We live among the silence of people who did not acknowledge that. I also want to go back a little bit to these questions that you asked it. How silence convulses around the moment.
Yes.
There was a wonderful poet from Yugoslavia, Tomas Solomon.
Oh, a wonderful poet, yes.
A very, very prolific, probably the most prolific poet of his generation.
Yes.
Wrote well over 30 books. Died, unfortunately, not long ago. Very energetic person. And yet, when the war in Yugoslavia started, he refused to write poems. He said, I can't contribute more language. I need to create a moment for this pain to be quiet, to vibrate. And he did not write poems for 5 years. of conflict in Yugoslavia. It's the most prolific poet of his generation. And that is, you can,
That's
whenever
very
you
moving,
think of
yeah.
that, you feel this vibrancy of what had happened and how he honors it. The poet honors it with his craft by silencing his craft.
Well,
There's so many different ways.
And it's kind of beautiful and speaks to the sort of danger of the kind of capitalization or branding of poetry, because the fact that he loved it so much and stopped suggests that idea that, I mean, one thing I felt in this book was that, well, you were writing very much from your soul. You said once you weren't a documentary poet, you wanted to be a spiritual poet. And that means risking silence, because you have to either find language that's adequate to bring this new news, or you don't want your language to collaborate in any way. And I think there are experiences that are very hard to bring into language. One thing I hope everyone reads Deaf Republic. I've read it now 5 times, and I'm preparing for this, and it's rewarded me every single time. And one reason, Ilya, that was interesting that I wanted to talk about is that speech can become hollow in all sorts of well-meaning ways. And sometimes you're writing about trauma, and it's nothing but sort of a pornographic almost exhilaration about trauma. And one of the things that made this book so moving to me is there's so much human joy in it, and that human joy is set right up against this terrible things happening in the fable, or not the fable, but the village. And I wondered, how that was interesting to me. Was that just something you felt instinctively? Was that something you thought about? You really have these poem after poem where the couple remembers so much great joy, and even in the middle of the war, we see the boys kind of playing around with each other, pissing in the street, all these things, and they're evidence of happiness, even in the midst of all this. And yet it's difficult, because they're set right up against things that we like to think we wouldn't recover from. You have that line, we didn't die and we didn't die, I guess whatever you have to say about that, it's something important.
Thank you for mentioning this. I think part of the privilege of living in the United States that is very much reflected in the limitation of our literature has to do with our kind of relegating even the term political poetry doesn't exist anywhere in the world except for the United States and Western Europe. Everywhere else in the world, political poetry is poetry everybody writes, because life is political.
Yes, it is.
Okay, but somehow here we have to separate it, and this is where politics happen, and this is where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
The other situation that we see often is when we say political poetry, we think, okay, now I have to write about all the terrible things that happened. But just doing that, we are like, I'm here, I'm comfortable, and they somewhere, they.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And we deny people who live in a difficult circumstance any chance of happiness in our work by doing so. What kind of witness it is if we just witness the complexities of war? If you don't witness the fact that people still have weddings and birthdays and get up in the morning and want to go on.
Yeah, if we don't witness the miracles, or not the miracles, but the presence of joy. And I always felt that way as a disability writer early on, or as a person with a disability, because in fact, one of the reasons I did that anthology, The Beauty is a Verb with Jennifer Bartlett, is we felt that we were so tired of everyone seeing us as so unfortunate, when it wasn't really true, or heroic or unfortunate, and that is a way of saying they, not me. And so it's exactly kind of what we wanted to do, write about, just as poets. And so I think that's really important. I talk a little bit about the 2 poems. We have no time. Oh, is there time for questions? Ilya, we talk too much. Thank you, everybody, for being here.